The atmospheric processors had failed 3 cycles ago, and the colony ship's emergency systems were dying one by one. Eris pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the medical bay, feeling the subtle vibration of the failing life support systems humming through the hull. She had perhaps 6 hours of breathable air left, maybe 7 if she stayed completely still. The Velthoran cub whimpered in the cryopod beside her, its crystalline fur dimming from luminescent blue to a sickly gray. Vel was barely a season old, the last surviving offspring of Ambassador Catherine, who had died when the meteoric debris tore through the ship's hull. The cub's breathing was shallow, labored. The cryosystem keeping it alive was on the same failing grid as everything else. Eris had been the ship's xenobiologist, tasked with understanding the 17 different species aboard the Unified Hope. Now she was the only human left conscious in this section, and possibly the only one who understood what was happening to Velthorans didn't breathe oxygen like humans. They absorbed refined atmospheric particles through their dermal membranes, particles that their homeworld's unique ecosystem produced naturally. The ship's synthesizers had been manufacturing these particles, but when the collision happened, those systems were among the first to fail. Without them, Vel would suffocate slowly and painfully. Eris had spent the last 2 days running every simulation, checking every backup system, jury-rigging solutions that failed one after another. The mathematics were cruel and absolute. There wasn't enough power to restart the synthesizers. The distress beacon was transmitting, but rescue was 4 days away minimum. Vel had perhaps 8 hours. She had exhausted every option except one. The emergency protocols included a bioconverter, designed for exactly one purpose: to break down organic matter at the molecular level and reconstitute it into whatever atmospheric compounds were programmed into its database. It required a massive organic input, something alive, something with complex biological systems, something human. Eris pulled up the converter's interface, her hands remarkably steady. She had already made the decision. Her body just needed to catch up with her mind. She began programming the sequence, inputting Vel's atmospheric requirements, calibrating the molecular patterns. The machine would take approximately 90 seconds to complete the conversion process. 90 seconds of unimaginable pain. Her hands paused over the final confirmation sequence. She looked at Vel again. The cub's eyes were closed now, its small chest barely rising. On her datapad, she had photos of Ambassador Catherine, showing off Vel just after hatching. The pride in the ambassador's translated words, unmistakable. The future, Catherine had called the cub. The bridge between our peoples. Eris thought about her own family back on Earth who would receive a message months from now about her death. She thought about the 17 species aboard this ship, all trying to build something better than the wars and isolation that had defined the previous century. She thought about what humanity had always been at its core: stubborn, self-sacrificing, and impossibly hopeful. She pressed the confirmation button. The bioconverter hummed to life, its chamber opening with a soft hiss. Eris stepped inside, feeling the cold metal platform beneath her feet. Through the transparent door she could see Vel's cryopod, the monitors showing vital signs dropping into critical ranges. "Computer," she said, her voice steady. "Initiate conversion sequence on my command. Route all synthesized particles directly to Medical Bay Cryopod 7. Priority override Eris Alpha 7. Confirmed," the computer's neutral voice replied. "Warning. Bioconversion will result in complete molecular dissolution of organic input. This process is irreversible and fatal. Confirm identity for execution. Xenobiologist Eris Chen, human citizen of Earth and the Unified Colonies. Confirming willingly. Acknowledged. Ready to proceed on your command." Eris took one last breath, filling her lungs completely, tasting the recycled air that had kept her alive for the 3-year journey from Earth. She thought about her favorite coffee shop in New Seattle. She thought about her mother's laugh. She thought about the sunrise over the Pacific that she'd watched the morning before launch. Promising herself she'd see it again someday, she wouldn't. But Vel would see sunrises on a dozen worlds. "Execute," she whispered. The chamber filled with light, and for exactly 90 seconds Eris experienced what no human was meant to survive. Her mind held onto consciousness far longer than it should have, perhaps from sheer stubborn human will, or perhaps because she needed to know it had worked. Through the pain, through the dissolution, she saw the monitors on Vel's cryopod change. Atmosphere stabilizing, dermal absorption normalizing, vital signs strengthening. The cub's crystalline fur began to glow blue again, brighter than before. When the rescue ship arrived 4 days later, they found Vel alive and stable, surrounded by enough synthesized particles to last for weeks. The medical bay's logs told them everything. The rescue captain, a grizzled Centauran named Drovik, played the logs for the Unified Council, his voice breaking during translation. "She bought us time with her death," Drovik told the council chambers, packed with representatives from 100 worlds. "But more than that, she gave us a truth we'd forgotten. Humans are terrifying not because of their weapons or their ships, but because when they love with a completeness that defies logic. They will burn themselves to ash if it means keeping a single spark of hope alive." Ambassador Catherine's mate, Solana, took custody of Vel when the ship finally reached port. The cub, now thriving, would grow up knowing the story of Arischen, the human who gave everything for a child not her own, of a species not her own, for a future she would never see. The Velthorans have no word in their language for the concept Aris embodied that day, so they borrowed one from humanity. Sacrifice.Vel would carry that word, and Eris's memory, for the next 200 years of its life. And every time the cub, and later the adult Vel, would speak to the Unified Council, it would begin the same way. "I am Vel, who lives because a human named Aris chose love over survival. Let me tell you what that means." And the galaxy would listen, because that's what humans do. They change everything, one impossible choice at a time.